Now, the South African Health Products Authority has approved Pfizer's application for a booster shot 6 months after the second dose was administered. The news comes as Pfizer-BioNTech yesterday released data on how their vaccine works on the newly discovered Omicron variant. In a statement, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla says 3 doses of their vaccine will work better against the Omicron than just 2 shots. With 7% of Africa's population fully vaccinated, the post-COVID recovery seems destined to lag behind the rest of the world. Human rights lawyer and founder of the Health Justice Initiative, Fatima Hassan, is on the line to unpack the issue. Fatima, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the AM report. Before we get to the actual vaccines and the announcements by Pfizer, we have seen a rapid increase in the number of new cases in South Africa. We're now standing at around 19,084 new COVID-19 cases which have been identified in the country, bringing the total number of laboratory-confirmed cases at just over 3 million. Are we in a COVID-19 crisis? I mean, is there a cause for some real concern when it comes to these increases? Because just a week ago, we heard the Health Minister, Dr. Joe Phaahla, speak about a 300% increase rate in the past 7 days when it comes to new cases.
Thanks. So I think there's obviously a concern that there's greater transmission, and the priority has to be to vaccinate as many people as possible in our country and to scale up vaccination rates across the continent and obviously across the world. The scientists and the experts that we are speaking to are obviously concerned that the emphasis can't just be only on vaccines. It has to continue being on social distancing, on masking up, and on reducing sort of the size of gatherings without necessarily going into, more severe or stringent lockdown. So there's a concern that is playing out around the world. There are other countries that are reintroducing compulsory measures on vaccinations, on mask mandates, and also reintroducing, some fun forms of lockdown, especially as we head into the Christmas holidays in the global north as well as in the global south.
And when it comes to the latest announcement, South African Health Products Authority approving the Pfizer's application for the booster shot, what are your thoughts around that booster shot and, of course, the timing of the shot and what it could mean when it comes to access to vaccines and vaccine hesitancy?
Thanks. So I think there's a few issues. The first is the systemic issues we're dealing with around trying to scale up the production of vaccines. If the entire world is going to be using third, fourth, and we don't know, 5, 6 shots potentially, then you need to address the issue of the scarcity of supplies. Just yesterday, the WHO indicated that most countries in the global south, and particularly in Africa, are unlikely to meet even the minimum target of 40% of people getting vaccinated, which includes, at least trying to protect the front line of healthcare workers. And that is because there's been an inconsistent and a drip feed system of supplies, particularly to countries in Africa, which has meant that as a continent, we only have about 7% of people fully vaccinated. So if we are going to be embarking onto a phase of booster shots, then we actually need to also boost the production and the manufacturing of vaccines. And that can only happen if you really have a genuine reckoning with the intellectual property system and you start actually addressing the licensing arrangements and the transfer of technology. If we're going to have companies who continue insisting on holding onto the technology even when they are promoting the rolling out of booster shots, and we're certainly not going to be able to bring enough supplies into the system. The second issue is that there's a huge inequality that we're dealing with, where some countries like ours are now approving booster shots, but other countries haven't even received first shots. So I think there's a conversation that needs to be had, is that are you the one country in Africa or one of a handful of countries in Africa that start administering booster shots while the rest of the continent hasn't even, the majority of the people in the rest of the continent haven't even received the first shot. The third issue with the approval from SAPRA, and this is why we've been saying that we need more transparency from the Ministerial Advisory Committee and the Department of Health, is we need to understand and there needs to be better communication from government about what this means. remember that this approval from SAHPRA doesn't deal with the issue of the cohort of people in South Africa who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, because of the interruptions of supplies this year, we have a situation where about 5 million people got the J&J vaccine, and more people in the vaccine program received the Pfizer vaccine, which you could address through the SAHPRA decision. So the outstanding question is that there's about 5 million people who are not healthcare workers, who are not part of this hesitancy trial, who received one shot of the J&J vaccine many months ago. And the issue is, what is the South African government going to decide in respect of the appropriate use of a second shot of either Johnson & Johnson vaccine or the Pfizer vaccine? Now, just on that, my last point is that a few weeks ago, when the second trial was announced, you'll remember that SAMA, the South African Medical Association, as well as the College of Medicine, had indicated that in their view that there should be a choice for both healthcare workers as well as the non-healthcare worker part of the population who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to choose which booster shot they want. So there's a lot of ethical decisions and choices, or what we call hard choices, that are going to have to be made in the next few days as we, head into the Christmas season for the South African government. And this is why it's so important for them to really share information, to share the scientific data, and for there to be a lot more transparency, because the last thing we want is more people becoming confused about what they are eligible for, what they are not eligible for, because we need to encourage vaccination instead of, encouraging hesitancy or confusion.
And I think that's a really important point to raise, especially when questions around how a country comes to the decision of a booster shot, and also questions around the efficacy and safety of boosting regimes, which are making a lot of people feel rather uncomfortable.
Yeah, and this is happening in a context where the CEOs of these companies are announcing often at times before the data is even peer-reviewed or before the data is published, that booster shots will be necessary, or the booster shot can actually mitigate or deal with the new variant. So there's a lot of different complexities playing out, and I think that is the reason why you need the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Vaccines, you need government departments, and actually, we have a National Coronavirus Command Council that's still in place because we still have this disaster. So there really needs to be, a better communication strategy on the part of government, so that all of these questions can actually be explained by experts and by scientists. I think the most pressing issue right now, when people read that everybody who got a Pfizer shot at least 6 months ago is eligible for a booster shot, the big question on everybody's mind is, well, how is that going to happen? Like practically, given that we would need more supplies for that, is government going to actually take that decision to do that? Because SAHPRA just approved it yesterday. But more importantly, what happens to everybody, which is what we've been saying, for a few months, what happens to the cohort of people who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? And the numbers there is like at least 5 million people got that shot.
Pfizer has said that the 2 doses may still protect against severe diseases caused by the Omicron strain, but are saying that protection will be improved with the 3rd dose, which also raises, that could raise vaccine hesitancy when it comes to people being open to the 3rd dose, when they've already said that, there is some level of protection with just having the 2 jabs.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's 2 issues playing out, right? The one is, the clinical need and the efficacy, and what does all of this mean in relation to the data that they've shared. And that is why you need independent scientists and experts to be able to confirm and tell you, and obviously government will look at the SAHPRA approval and then make a decision, one would assume, based on that information. But the second thing that's playing out is, the desire to basically introduce booster shots into multiple programs around the world when we have this dire situation of vaccine inequity. I mean, if most of the doses are going to high-income countries, and then you're promoting booster shot in settings where they haven't even received the first shot, it's a very difficult situation, and that is why I think you're absolutely right. You need to have a very sophisticated communication strategy that deals with these multiple factors at the same time, and where it's done in a way which it doesn't confuse people and doesn't create more hesitancy.
Thank you so much for your time and your input. Let's leave it there for now. Fatima Hassan, Health Justice Initiative founder, speaking to some of the many complexities that come with the latest announcement. Pfizer announcing, of course, that a third dose will be administered, and SAHPRA also weighing in on that decision. A lot of questions and not very many answers, which is something that still needs to be explained in greater depth.